So in this segment, we're going to be talking about the UK delaying import checks of EU goods. Now, I'm quite late to the party, as always, but I think this was a good one worth talking about purely because it does show you, again, how unprepared the UK are. Even potentially a year down the line, we still haven't got things together. So embarrassing. On the 31st of December 2020, the UK left the EU single market and customs union. Yep, okay. The government put in place staffing, infrastructure and IT to ensure a smooth transition. No, we didn't, because we weren't ready at the time. We weren't ready. So why are you lying? You know, your second line is a lie. Second and third lines are lies. Your first one isn't. It's true. You've gone straight into the lies here. You know, Penny Mordaunt, shame on you. So we go on. Thanks to the hard work of traders and hauliers, we did not see disruption at our ports. That's because we didn't do any import checks. It's not because of anyone's hard work. We're not checking goods coming in. Not hard. And despite dips in trade value with the EU in the early months, that was dips in exports, not imports, because we stopped exporting as much because of export checks, because of Brexit. The monthly value of exports to the EU has recovered strongly. I mean, it's mainly because I think economies are picking up a bit, and because people have got more used to the export checks, less stuff gets sent back, essentially. Now the UK is an independent trading nation. Well, shocker, you haven't told us that every 2 minutes. Our intention is to introduce the same controls on incoming goods from the EU as on goods coming from the rest of the world. Well, why haven't you done it yet? I don't know. What's going on? The government initially announced a timetable for the introduction of the final stages of those controls on the 11th of March. The government's own preparations in terms of systems, infrastructure and resourcing remain on track to meet that timetable. Well, they don't, because we didn't do checks on the 11th of March. We're still not doing checks now. So what are you talking about? Once again, you're going to hear that phrase a lot, me saying, what are you talking about? Because these people are just full of lies, and it's very easy to dispel these lies. Like, better propaganda is needed. You need the guys from the Times and the Telegraph. However, the pandemic has had longer lasting impacts on business. That's because you guys failed to deal with it. Let's not get it twisted now. Both in the UK and in the European Union, which dealt with it better than us, than many observers expected in March. There is also pressure on global supply chains caused by a wide range of factors, including the pandemic and the increased costs of freight transport. These are true, but they're impacting us a lot more. These pressures are being specifically felt in the agri-food sector. That's mainly down to Brexit, really, because we can't export as much stuff because everything gets checked. In these circumstances, the government has decided to delay further some of the elements of new controls, especially those related to sanitary and phytosanitary goods, accordingly. So, because of the impact Brexit has done on the agri-food sector, right, of goods going to the EU from the UK, we're not going to do any checks on goods coming from the EU into the UK. That doesn't make any sense at all. So this is what they've done. So the requirement of pre-notification of agri-food imports will be introduced on the 1st of January as opposed to the 1st of October. So that's essentially things like vet checks. The main issue with that is we don't have enough vets to check all these goods. Vets don't typically work on weekends. No, I think my one actually does. But a lot of vets wouldn't want to work on weekends. Also, the fact that we've lost a lot of vets because they've left to... those were EU vets that have left to go back to somewhere in the EU, and also the fact that a lot more vets prefer working with friendly animals like my cat Shinji, who's not in the room, rather than dealing with big animals like cows and bulls and stuff like that. Not the best kind of animals, and also the fact that those animals are typically slaughtered, which some people don't like. Maybe vets are against the murder of animals. Who knows? The new requirement for export health certificates, which were meant to be introduced in October, will now be introduced in July. So they've delayed that by almost a year for health certificates. Why? Why have you delayed that by a year? How are you still not ready for this stuff yet? It's unreal. I suppose as we approach the potential winter of discontent, maybe if they wanted to, they would push this stuff well into next year. Because we are facing massive problems, especially during the winter. It's going to get quite bad. So if I were them, I'd push this well into next year. Phytosanitary certificates and physical checks on SPS goods at border control posts due to be introduced in the 1st of January will now be introduced in the 1st of July. That's because they're still not ready, and ports are very reluctant to hire the staff, because that comes at an initial cost. Hiring staff, training them now costs a lot of money, and you'll only get that money once those checks start being done. If the UK keeps delaying the checks, you've lost a lot of money. Also, the fact that ports are run by councils, which have had massive cuts over the last decade because of the Conservative government. So, massive wins here for the Conservative government. The requirement for safety and security declarations on imports will be introduced as of the 1st of July 2022 as opposed to January 1st. And the question we need to ask ourselves is that, does anyone believe that these checks will happen on the 1st of January and the 1st of July? I just don't think they will. And I think that's mainly because until WTO members get involved, they have no reason to do these checks. Because once we start doing these checks, I think Britain imports around 60% of our food. That's only going to go up as farms struggle massively. It might go up to, say, 65%. And obviously, the more we import from the EU, the more of these goods that would have to be checked, which causes further problems. So I just, again, what is the UK's endgame with regards to these checks? Because they're in a position where the only things they can do are not do checks on EU goods, which could incur the wrath of the WTO, or lower checks overall on all goods, which I'm surprised we haven't done that yet and said, thanks to the fact that we are an independent trading nation, we can now lower checks on all goods coming from abroad because the EU had the rules too high and now they're lower, which will mean it will save British people money. Like, why are you not running with that? What's going on here? I don't know, it's very strange. Got a bit more, so the BBC are covering it, which is that the UK is likely to delay the checks, blaming COVID, because of course they are. Measures were expected to come in next month, will be introduced in January and July respectively. Labour said the government did not have a suitable answer to tackling delays and red tape at the border. Well, neither do you, to be fair, Labour. So the move comes amid a shortage of some products in shops and supermarkets. I think the key issue is, to be fair, one sec, I've got it on here, which is that if we actually look at this picture, which I've crudely drawn lines on, if you bear with me one moment, can I go back? Okay, that's not going to let me go back to the pen mode. Sorry about this. Here we go. Okay, it's not going to let me zoom in. But if you look at the arrows I've crudely drawn, you can see the arrows going from the UK to, the EU countries. Those are areas where goods are going to be checked. Goods going from those areas will be checked, right? From GB to the EU. But the issue is goods going the other way won't be checked. And a further problem is, we'll ditch this. A further problem is that lorries will get stuck at these ports. Once we start doing import checks, lorries will get stuck at these ports, and there'll be a lot more lorry drivers who say, we're not going to do jobs to the UK because you're going to get checked going from the UK. So if you go from Dover to Calais, you'll get checked here in Calais, right? But if you're going from Calais to Dover, you'll also be checked. That's going to prolong your route. That's going to make it much longer. You're going to be stuck in the UK for a lot longer. And once you come out of the UK, say if you have to drop those goods off, or say say Oxford, right? Because Oxford's there on the map. So you got to drive to Calais, get to Dover, stuck there for, say, I don't know, like 4 or 5 hours, because let's not get it twisted, that's a very busy crossing, and there's going to be a lot of noobs there, a lot of new recruits there who are going to be quite slow. So you go there, you go all the way to Oxford, you get, some more stuff. I know a lot of EU drivers are leaving the UK empty, but say in this example, they're not. They go to Oxford, they pick up, I don't know, some sheep or something, who knows. They go all the way back, go to Dover, get stuck again. They get stuck in this Dover-Calais crossing because all those goods have to be checked. So that could take, say, another 3 hours. We'll say 3 hours because the French are quicker. So you can be stuck potentially at Dover for 6 hours and then at Calais for another 3. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to do that? Especially when you're paid on your trip by the mile. You're paid per mile gone. You're not paid for the job itself. You're paid for the travel. So if you're sat there for 6 hours, you're not making any money. Why would you do that when you could, say, go from Paris to Belgium, or Paris to Berlin, or Leipzig? Because you can see Leipzig on the map there. Where, yes, it's a longer route, but you're not going to get stuck. So you can continuously make money. It doesn't make sense. And so I can't tell you exactly why the UK are doing this. I think it's mainly down to us not being prepared for the incoming checks, in terms of at the border, but also the fear that EU drivers will stop coming here, which will make importing goods a lot more difficult, especially as the UK agri-foods industry continues to crumble. we've got a bit more here, which is this kind of thread from Lisa O'Carroll. Again, she does great work, and if you're not following her on Twitter, you really should if you want to stay up to date with things. She's a great source of information, which is that business leaders slam government Brexit delays. The Food and Drink Federation are highly critical, said many of its members, dismayed. Not only does it mean their preparations have gone to waste, preparing for the import checks, worse, it actually helps UK competitors. Logistics UK says it penalises those companies that invested time and money into preparing for checks. This second change of plan for import controls would add uncertainty. And obviously the point being is that what happens when January hits and the UK further delays it again, or if the UK actually implements the checks and you're not ready because they've delayed it so many times. This is the second time I think they've delayed it. So what do you do if you're one of those companies who's unsure if you want to spend more money training people when it's going to go to waste? Smaller businesses welcome the move. The British Chamber of Commerce saying this pragmatic approach will ensure an orderly transition that does not unduly disrupt trade. Well, that's not really true, is it? Because it would have been an orderly transition if we had the facilities in place and the staff, but we don't. This extension allows businesses on both sides of the Irish Sea additional time to get ready. How much more time do they need? And point being is that these guys, these people at the logistics and whatever, they wanted to use us doing import checks as a bargaining tool against the UK, against the EU even, saying that, oh look, if we reduce our checks, you can reduce yours now, because your exports are getting hit, your exports are tanking to the UK, when that's not going to work, because I don't think the EU care that much. If exports, because a point that a lot of people make, which some people, especially in Britain, forget, the EU have a massive selection of countries to deliver to, that are, you can move freely through, all the way from, I think, Spain up to Sweden, and from Portugal up to Sweden, across to, which one's an EU member? Poland. I don't think Lithuania are. I could be wrong. If I am, that's fine. You can go all the way from Portugal to Poland or Romania without any issues, right? Why would they care that much about the UK doing checks? Yes, we're a very large export market, but at the same time, people are going to lose money, but we move. The EU clearly value the project above an individual member, which is important. In any business, any kind of even football club or whatever sports team, once you put individual interests above the club, that's when you run into ruin. That's when you run into massive problems. But we've seen that in football, where Manchester United had to sell Ronaldo in 2008. He put himself above the club. He had to go. I think David Beckham, very similar. And the UK was in that same position where we put ourselves above the EU, above the project. We demanded concessions, didn't get them, and said, fine, we're going to leave. And we left. You can't moan at that point. You can't cry at that point. And the simple fact is, if France can't export goods to the UK, they will look at the other export markets the EU have. And, they've got a whole list of third countries as well, which the UK may not have trade deals with or have inferior trade deals with. So there are options for EU countries that the UK simply does not have. The EU also has a host of bilateral trade agreements with the mighty USA, which the UK does not have access to anymore. So the EU countries have far more options than we do when it comes to exporting goods. So using our import checks of EU goods as a kind of bargaining tool, it doesn't make sense. The EU is a massive market full of developed economies, full of so many consumers, hence why countries are desperate to do deals with the EU. We're not that guy, pal. It's very easy for us to state this. We're not that guy. We're not Big Boss. That's what people need to understand. We're not that guy. We're not Yami Yugi. And the simple fact is, we don't have any bargaining tools really to use against the EU. The only one we potentially have, if we are proper sadists, is the Northern Ireland Protocol. But even then, the UK bullying over that is still not working. But it's not mentioned here specifically. But I have seen it mentioned in another article. Hence why I'm saying it. Don't think that us doing import checks of EU goods is a bargaining tool against the EU. It's simply not going to play out like that. And the UK doing this, it just further strengthens the EU because they can export to us fairly freely. I think the only thing that EU companies would have to pay are customs duties. And even then, they probably get away with not paying them because a lot of the goods aren't checked. But the EU, again, it's not us that holds all the cards. It's basically the EU at this point. And when we start doing import checks, then we start doing it and we're actually a decent member of the WTO rather than a member that is in breach of most favourable nations. But anyways, I've rambled on for a long time in this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.